Hey everybody, welcome to the video for my core plays for week 6 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. This is where I go my 3 favorite cash and tournament plays on the entire slate. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. And if you like the content you see on YouTube, I think you'll definitely like the extra content I put over on the site. Spreadsheets, projections, ownership projections, optimizers for all sports, NBA, MLB, NASCAR, and the NFL. So lots of stuff over there to be excited about, and I'd be more than happy to have you join the community over there. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you. Versus the projections, there's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're new signing over on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100, so it's free money. Why not use it to your advantage when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think it'll be it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And starting us off with cash game core play number 1, we have KAREEM of the Cleveland Browns at $6,200. It was way too cheap for the expected role he's going to see on Sunday. Not only am I projecting him to be the highest owned player on the slate, let alone just at the running back position, he's also my second highest projected running back, only behind Austin Eckler. And we're talking only $6,200 for KAREEM Hunt. He's only about a couple points off of my Austin Eckler projection. So he is popping up in the optimizer a lot. And I have a hard time seeing him bust. I haven't really talked about KAREEM Hunt throughout the week because I thought Nick Chubb was going to play, but he got ruled out yesterday after I posted my final thoughts video. So obviously I was not aware that KAREEM Hunt was going to be back here. I know he's currently questionable, but the assumption is that he's going to be good to go, but we will not have that news until probably around an hour or so before kickoff. But I'm going to assume KAREEM Hunt's playing, and if he is, well, he grades out exceptionally well on Sunday. Matchup versus the Cardinals, I would say it's an elite spot here. They're still 13th EVA versus the run, which is kind of mid-pack, a little bit better than that, allowing the 9th fewest points per game to running backs. But close to 100 rushing yards per game, 5 catches and 40 receiving yards. And KAREEM Hunt is also very involved in the passing game, over a 15% target share in the season. And he's a touchdown scoring machine. And even with Nick Chubb playing this year, he's still averaging 11 carries, 60 rushing yards, rushing touchdown, 5.4 yards per carry, and 30 receiving yards per game. So if you take him out of the equation, his 18 carries per game and a target or two, I mean, KAREEM Hunt just is in an absolute smash spot here. The Browns are 3.5-point favorites at home. There's projected to be some wind in this game, which if they can't pass the ball well, they'll just rely on the run game. Even more dump offs to KAREEM Hunt, which he excels at. So loving Hunt here. And I will mention over on PrizePicks, his rushing prop is at 87.5. It's a bit steep, but with him being the just main RB1 here, I do think it's somewhat interesting, but I will say it's a little bit juiced up. But what looks actually more tempting is his receiving prop at 24.5, which he has gone over in several games so far this season. And moving on to core play number 2, we have the man DAVANTE Adams at $9,000. And I'm going to call him the Derrick Henry of the wide receiver position just because the volume's there every single week. The chances of a touchdown are very, very high. And we just know we're going to get from DAVANTE Adams. There's a lot of good wide receivers on the slate every single week, but no one feels as safe as DAVANTE Adams. I realize the price is getting up there at $9,000, but he seems worth every single penny. Absolutely exploded last week, over 40 DraftKings points, over 200 receiving yards, found the end zone. But with no real super expensive running backs on this slate like Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey to pick from. Yes, Austin Eckler's there, but he's only $7,900. And there's a lot of good mid-range running backs this week. So I think if we kind of stick with the mid-range running backs, we should be able to afford DAVANTE Adams, which if you guys watched my lineup building video, I was able to fit in DAVANTE Adams quite easily with a lot of good plays, including spinning up a quarterback with Lamar Jackson. So Adams should not be that hard to fit in, and it's hard not to see him excel once again. The volume he is getting is pretty much unmatched by anybody else. He's got a 38.13% target share in the season, 89% weighted opportunity share, a 45% market share of the team's air yards, and over 12 targets per game. Also averaging an insane 0.67 fantasy points per route ran, 0.37 targets per route ran, and 3.49 yards per route ran. And while the matchup versus the Bears doesn't look sexy, they are 4th EVA versus the pass, they're still 22nd versus wide receivers, allowing nearly 200 receiving yards per game. And DAVANTE Adams is pretty much the only wide receiver worth anything on this offense. And whenever they get around the goal line, the red zone, Aaron Rodgers is looking DAVANTE Adams away. He does not like getting the ball ran in. He wants those passing touchdowns, and they go to DAVANTE Adams. And if you guys are interested, his prop on PrizePicks is sitting at 97.5. I believe yesterday it was sitting at 99.5 or 100.5, so it has gotten bumped down a little bit. So if you guys want to buy the dip there, I know it's pretty steep, nearly 100 receiving yards, but he is averaging 115 in the season, so I wouldn't say it's too far-fetched. Although that 200 receiving yard performance last week definitely skewed those numbers a little bit. Moving on to our third and final cash game core play of week 6, we have Darrell Henderson Jr. at $6,000, running back for the LA Rams, and this game just sets up perfectly for the run game. 8.5-point favorites, which usually bodes well for the big favorite running back, which is Henderson in this game. He is yet to have a bad game this year. He missed 1 week, but besides that, He's been sitting comfortably in the teens for the most part, and he's on a great offense. They should have plenty of scoring opportunities. He's going to get the carries around the goal line, and he's involved in the passing game too. And this is a great matchup versus the New York Giants, who have really struggled versus the run so far this season. 26 DVA versus the run, and also 26 versus running backs. 123 rushing yards per game, nearly 6 catches on 50 receiving yards, which he is involved in the passing game. He does have just under a 10% target share on the season, so it's a nice little floor boost there with his 3.5 targets per game. And they're also averaging nearly 30 DraftKings points allowed per game to the running back position. So Henderson, at this price point, there's a lot of good cheap running backs on this slate right in this mid-range, but he's grading out exceptionally well point per otherwise, and actually second in that category, only behind KAREEM Hunt this week. And looking at the props over on Prize Picks, his receiving yards prop is kind of interesting at 15.5 because he is averaging over 22 receiving yards per game. And his rushing props at 75.5, averaging just under that this year, but with the potential game script that could work in Henderson's favor. And moving over to the GPP side of things, we have DeAndre Swift here at $6,300, and like I said, the mid-range is loaded with running backs this week, and you really can't go wrong with any of them. But I'm assuming Henderson and KAREEM Hunt take the load of ownership. Also, Jonathan Taylor, who will not be featured in this video, will also be highly owned as well. People like Austin Eckler, so some of these guys have to be lower owned than the others. And DeAndre Swift is definitely a candidate for that, just because he does not get quite the volume that the running backs should see. But he is quite involved in the passing game. That sets up perfectly in this game versus Cincinnati because they've really struggled versus pass-catching running backs this year. DeAndre Swift does not get like a ton of work on the ground. He's only averaging around 11 carries per game and under 40 rushing yards, which is not great. But his involvement in the passing game is what keeps him being an excellent play every single week because he's averaging nearly 7 targets per game, nearly 6 catches, and 18.7% target share, which is the highest on the entire slate, even more so than Austin Eckler, and a 27% weighted opportunity share. And while the Bengals are 7th DVA versus the run this year, they're 20th versus running backs because they're allowing over 8 catches per game to the position, 50 receiving yards, and over half a rushing touchdown. So DeAndre Swift profiles very well in this matchup, and he's actually a great run back option to your Bengals stacks, which makes him a good tournament play. Because a lot of people like to use like traditional pass catching options like either tight ends or wide receivers, but the Lions are down a lot of people. Everyone's going to be stacking Burrow with Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins this weekend. And you need a run back option, typically in tournaments. And DeAndre Swift is pretty much the #1 guy for the Lions here. Moving on to GPP core play number 2, we have Brandin Cooks of the Houston Texans at $5,100. And trust me, I do not like talking about a Houston Texan on the core plays here, but this sets up pretty well for Brandin Cooks. There's a lot of good mid-range wide receivers on this slate, but I think he's a good pivot off of the chalkier Jacoby Myers, T. Higgins on this slate. Jamar Chase really isn't in the same price range because they're not too far off each other. But I like Brandin Cooks here. I know, negative stigma around the Houston Texans, and his quarterback is terrible, Davis Mills. So that should hopefully keep his ownership somewhat lower. But this is a pretty good spot versus the Colts. Indy's secondary is bad. I think we saw that versus the Ravens. Hollywood Brown ate them up. Mark Andrews ate them up. And they're currently 30th DVA versus the pass and 25th versus wide receivers on 2 receiving touchdowns, 173 receiving yards, and over 43 DraftKings points per game to the position. And Brandin Cooks is basically the only guy here. Like, if we're looking at his volume numbers this season, they look really good. About a 34% target share, 85% weight opportunity share, which is only behind Davante Adams, and about a 50% market share of the team's air yards. And Indy really struggles with the deep ball, which is something Brandin Cooks can do. And hopefully we can get some good garbage time out of him. If you are playing Jonathan Taylor, he actually does make sense correlation-wise to run it back with a guy like Brandin Cooks, hoping for some second-half garbage time. And looking at his receiving yards prop on Prize Picks, it's currently sitting at 66.5, which is a little tempting to take the over. As he's averaging close to 80 on the season, this is a great spot versus Indy. And he was under that the past 2 games, but he was playing the Bills and Patriots, who do have some solid pass defenses, and this is definitely a lot softer. And our third and final GPP core play of the slate, it's like our 4th mid-range running back we're going to talk about. So like I said, the mid-range is absolutely loaded this week, but some of these guys have to be lower owned than the others. I think Joe Mixon definitely has some things working against him that'll make him lower owned than the rest that we talked about. First off, everyone likes the Cincy passing attack in this game versus Detroit. People like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase is going to be highly owned, T. Higgins will be highly owned, Tyler Boyd not quite up there, but still people are going to play the Cincy passing attack. If they're going to do that, they're probably not going to throw Joe Mixon in the same lineup, so he's going to be naturally lower owned. Plus we have guys like DeAndre Swift, KAREEM Hunt, Darrell Henderson, even Jonathan Taylor, that other people are going to play besides Joe Mixon, especially coming off an injury last week where he wasn't really too involved. Although we did get a status update from the coach that said Mixon is expected to have a full workload. If that's the case, I love this spot versus Detroit. It's a 3.5-point favorite, and their run defense is absolutely terrible. And we know Mixon getting a full workload, that's a lot of volume. I believe heading into the week prior before he was injured, he was averaging like the 2nd or 3rd total touch opportunities per game, only behind Derrick Henry. Now, it wasn't like quite up to Derrick Henry because he's on a different stratosphere, but I mean, still, he gets plenty of volume. Like, you could easily see 20 plus carries in this game, get a couple of targets. Looks like Samaje Perine's going to be out, which is definitely a boost because he's going to be like the only running back there. And Detroit is currently 28th DVA versus the run and 29th versus running backs, allowing over 31 DraftKings points per game, over a rushing touchdown, and over 112 rushing yards. So it's a great spot for Mixon. Should be lower owned just because of the running backs he's priced around, and he's a great pivot off that chalky passing game. With that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become a fish member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Extra content over there, and if you like the free content on YouTube, I think you would definitely like the spreadsheets, ownership projections, optimizers, all that fun stuff. Link can be found down below for all sports, not just NFL. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you're new signing over there, you can get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. That'll be it. I wish you guys the best of luck in week 6. If you have any questions, make sure to comment down below. But if not, I wish you guys the best.